TikTok, it's time to rock. You're welcome to another wonderful edition of Introduction to Political Science. A quick reminder from where we are coming from. In our last class, we were able to deal with constitution and constitutionalism, and as a result, we are able to deal with types of constitution. We're able to treat flexible constitution, rigid constitution. We dealt with written constitution and unwritten constitution and the rest of them. And today we will be treating a very important topic. This topic we are treating today is very important to political science. It is one of the foundational courses of political science. And if you're unable to understand this particular course, I'm so sorry, you might not be a very good political gladiator. And I am talking about no any other course but origin and evolution of states. At many occasions and at different occasions, political philosophers and people have always asked a particular question on how the state came into being. How did we have a community of people coming together under one umbrella and having group of people that rules the community? How have they been able to get around with things, with justice? How have they been able to get around with the legitimate functions? How have they been able to get around with legislative functions? How have they been able to get around with executive functions? And how have they been able to deal with the judiciary functions? How come? How do people just rule? How come a particular person is the one ruling? How come a particular set of people has the one ruling? How come the particular set of people are the one that are seen as the leaders of a community? How come not the other person? How did we get here? Where are we coming from? Where are we going to? How did we get to the point of where we now begin to understand that there must be somebody at the head of the affairs of a community? Must we be governed? Why must we be governed? Why can't we just stay without anybody to control us or keep rules to protect lives and properties? This and other things are what we are going to be dealing with in this class, because there are different theories that have expanded, that have explained the reason for the creation of state and how people have been able to come together and rule themselves, how people have been able to decide on rulers and reason why they have decided to have a ruler or group of rulers, and above all the genesis of the state, how it has been invented, who creates who is more important, is it the state or the man? What is the relationship between man and the state? Who is more important? Is it the state or man? Who is bigger? Who drives who? Is it the state that drives man or man drives the state? Can the state exist without man? And can man exist without the state? Can man achieve his personal interest and personal ego without the existence of the states? Okay, you will agree with me that there are a lot of whys, a lot of who's, a lot of what, a lot of questions to be answered. I'm pretty sure that at the end of this course, you'll be able to give answers to all of these questions. There are different theories, there are different beliefs, and we are going to be dealing with them today. At this junction, we will be dealing with the natural theory, the force theory, the divine right theory, the social contract theory, and the rest of them if time permits us. For natural theory, according to Aristotle, humans by nature are social beings and they gather naturally to interact among themselves, to commune, to communicate, to change ideas among themselves. It is just natural for humans to communicate among themselves. And apart from the biological necessity for human interaction, human beings find more fulfillment when they come together to socialize. Human beings find more fulfillment when they come together to interact. Human beings find more fulfillment in exchanging ideas among themselves. And this coming together of people, this coming together of men, this coming together of great men of valor among themselves, this coming together of great minds is the only way whereby men can satisfy and achieve their personal ego. ego and achieve their personal perfection and achieve their personal satisfaction. So this is to say that because man wants to exchange ideas, because man wants to interact, because man wants to socialize, that was why they come together. And it is this coming together that led to a community. And this coming together have to be championed, have to be overseen by one powerful person. So the natural theory sees the state as coming to being as a result of natural evolution. So apart from the biological necessity for interaction, apart from the personal satisfactions of ego, the natural theory sees the beginning of government in a state as a result of various factors running through ages and different epochs. These factors are factors like the kingship, the religion factors, and the political consciousness factor, and the rest of them. For the kingship factor, we can take that from the primitive society of Karl Marx. When people begin to multiply in a primitive society, they begin to understand that conflict begins to come up from different kingship, from different families as a result of the coming together. So by experience, they begin to understand that there is need for leadership. There is need for one person to oversee the affairs of the community. Taking it from the perspective of the religion factor, it can be explained in different ways. One of the way it can explain it is the fact that in that same primitive society, people begin to understand that there must be a supreme being. Somebody must have created the skies. Somebody must have created the waters of the seas. Somebody must have created the rain. Somebody must have created the mountain. Somebody must have a spiritual power to rule the entire world. So they now begin to have a particular person designated for spiritual affairs. They begin to have religion. They begin to believe in supreme being. So for them now to have a connection between them and their ancestors, there must be somebody that will link them. And most cases, that one person always becomes the leader or part of the leaders of the society. Let's go back to the Jews. Moses became the leader. He was a spiritual leader, and as a spiritual leader, he was in charge of political affairs. He gave them the rules. He gave them the 10 commandments, which was like constitution to them. And whenever there are issues, he is always the one to preside over issues, to judge, to give them the way, to give them messages from God. So he became a religious leader and also a political leader. So what we are saying is that the state came into being. The state evolved out of the complex sects of human. No wonder Aristotle argued that man by nature is a political animal, a beast or a god. So the need for order and security is inevitable. In the words of Aristotle, quoting him word to word, in his write-up, The Politics, Volume 1, in the 4th BC, he said, "Hence, it is evident that the state is a creation of nature, and that man is by nature a political animal, and he who by nature and not by mere accident is without a state is either above humanity or below it. He is the tribeless, the lawless, the heartless one, who is the outcast, who is a lover of war. He may be compared with the birds that flies alone in the air." So all we are saying in essence is that it is just natural for human beings to come together and commune together in a society. Nobody wants to be alone. Nobody wants to be left alone. Nobody wants to be ignored and be left in isolation. And if at all there is any person that wants to be ignored and be isolated for any reason whatsoever, according to Aristotle, that person is the tribeless. That person is the heartless one. That person is the lawless, who can be compared to the bird that flies alone in the air. These will now lead us to force theory. Propounders of force theories argued that state came into being as a result of application of coercion and conquest. They believed that the use of force is paramount to leadership. The main stand of the force theory is that state was originated as a result of forceful subjugation of the weak by the strong. That a group of strong and powerful people and cunning people came together to self-acclaim themselves as the master of the society, thereby taking charge of the resources of the society, ran it in their own interest to please their own mind, and thereby making the rest of the people their servants. And they are able to do all of this because they are strong, wise, and cunning. In the latter part of the 29th century, some German philosophers argued that force was the most important characteristic attribute of the states. In fact, they propounded that might is right. They also believed that power has its own justification. So as a result, they believed that physically powered people are the best in the community. And this is why in those centuries, kings have been trained from childhood to be warriors. They have been trained to be brave. They have been trained to be able to fight war and being trained to be bold in order to conquer nations in war. As a result, bigger nations begin to conquer smaller nations, expanding their coast, getting bigger, because they also believe that the bigger you are, the powerful you become. The bigger you are, the more powerful your strength becomes. The bigger the country, the bigger the military capacity of that country, because they are still going to use that same force to get people, to get young men into the military. Either you like it or not, at a particular age, you just have to join the military force. As long as you are capable, you have your two legs, you have your two hands, you have your two eyes, and you are okay mentally, you just have to join the military force. It is like an allegiance that have been pledged by the smaller nations towards the bigger nations when they were being conquered. So because your own smaller nations have been conquered, the leaders of your nation will have pledged allegiance to the bigger nations that have conquered the smaller ones to render their own youth as military strength to the bigger ones, because the smaller ones have now become a little province or a province to the bigger ones. It will also interest you to note that the force theory accordingly has no respect for the natural right or any form of universal human right for citizens, and does not even approve any resistance to the act of political authority. There are numbers of scholars that have argued in support of force theory. The Greek writer Thrasymachus once observed that justice is in the interest of the strong. This implies that you have to be powerful, you have to be strong in order for you to get justice. Marx also shared the same view when he argues that the conquest band imposed a dominion on the conquered. Machiavelli and other Machiavellians are fanatic believers of force theory. This was as a result of the argument of Machiavelli when he said that he admonished every prince, by prince he means leader, to combine force with guile in order to sustain himself in power. And of course, Adolf Hitler was a great fanatic of force theory. Hitler declared that when those with the greatest power dominated others, the most perfect possible existence would have been achieved. All what we have been saying from the beginning of force theory to this point is that state was created by conquest and force. Stronger people were able to fight the weaker ones and acquire their land, acquire their properties, and begin to control them as a result of power. They have the biggest power, they have the biggest might, they have the strongest power and the strongest might, and as a result, might was right. This now takes us to the divine theory. The divine theory has three main components. The first, number one, is that the state is being established by an ordinance of God. Number two, its rulers are divinely ordained. Number three, they are accountable to no authority but God. According to the divine right theory, it stipulates it clearly that the state was ordained and created by God himself. And after God created the state, he deliberately created rulers to rule over the affairs of the states. And all of these rulers that he has ordained are not answerable to any man but him himself, God. The notion of this theory is being promoted by kings and emperors of the Middle Age, where they continuously and constantly claim that they are descendants of God himself. The early Hebrew, for example, always believed that their government was created by God himself. And they always portray their point saying that Abraham got married to Sarah, who gave birth to Isaac, and Isaac gave birth to Jacob and Esau. Jacob later became Israel, and from there they even got their name. And they are the children of Israel until they got to Egypt, and from Egypt Moses came as their spiritual leader, and he took them out of Egypt, took them on a journey from Egypt for 40 years, and they got to the Canaan land with Joshua, and at the end of the day they became a nation of their own as a result of the ordination of God himself. Apart from the early Hebrews who always support the divine right theory, there are other modern and ancient governments that support this theory. These include the Hindu Maharaja. The word Maharaja is a title given to a great king, a great ruler that is seen as a reincarnation of a god called Krishna. So at different times there have been different Maharaja and they are always not accountable to anybody because they are not just a descendant of the god, but instead they are God themselves because they came back as human to live among men. We cannot exempt the Egyptian kings who are being seen as the sons of Ra. Ra is the god of sun in Egypt and he was being believed to have created the world out of water. He was a god that created other little gods under him. According to the belief from Egypt, Ra created men from the tears of his eyes. He was believed to have children, sons, who are the king of Egypt, and they are answerable to nobody but him himself, Ra. We also have the Makados of Japan, who have said to have carried out the claim of divine right to the extreme when they claim that they are the reincarnation of the god of sun, who is the ruler of the universe. As a result, they are always being authoritative. No one comes to challenge them because they see them as the reincarnation of God himself. So they are like God on earth. Therefore, they are answerable to no one. This would now lead us to the social contract theory. There are many versions of the social contract theory. However, the basics of the theory is that the state came into existence because of the contract between the rulers and the ruled. The understanding is that individuals surrender their right to rule themselves to the government or a constituted authority with the hope of getting security and every necessity of life in return. However, why the contract was established or how the contract was established is where opinion differs. Thomas Hobbes' version can be seen as the most popular of all the social contract theory. Thomas Hobbes wrote in his book The Leviathan in the 17th century. According to Hobbes, in the beginning, men were living in a state of nature where life is poor, solitary, nasty, brutish, and short. So, in order to free themselves from the state of nature where life is characterized by selfishness and selfish interest, men begin to surrender their liberty to one man called the Leviathan or the king, or an assembly of men that aim to transform the state of nature with its insecurity of lives and properties to become a civil society where there is peace, order, and tranquility. This is the same thing as saying that men came together understanding that they have to stop the killing of themselves. They have to look for a way to live amicably among each other instead of fighting and killing themselves in a society that is short and nasty. So they begin to understand the reason for peace. As a result, they came together and say, okay, we will drop our power, we will stop fighting, surrender our liberty to one man being the Leviathan, to the group of men to be able to rule us, save us from short lives, make us promise of better lives and necessity of life, and make sure you fulfill your promises, and we pledge allegiance to you to support you. As long as you play your part, we also play our part. Contract sealed, signed, and delivered.
Thank you for the time you have spared until I come across your way again next time. In case you have not subscribed to this channel, please kindly subscribe to this channel and please press the notification button so that you can always get a notification from us as soon as we post a new video.